Music as self-care? What? Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I'm your host, Dupree, scouring the globe to bring you stories of courage, passion, and resilience. If I could sum up this podcast into one word, I would use empathy. Now let's get inspired. Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I am your host once again, Dupree, here to drop some spiritual knowledge on you. Today we have a wonderful interview with Bill Protzmann, who talks about the wonderful powers of music. Super interesting interview, probably the most interesting interview I've heard yet that didn't really talk about the struggles and vulnerabilities of the interviewee, most about what they do and what they think, but it was super interesting. It was such a different way to think, but now as part of the interview where I am vulnerable to my audience, because if I can't ask myself to be vulnerable, how can I ask my guests not to be vulnerable? It's funny, it was like a year I said interviewees because I just couldn't think of the word guests. I guess that's the problem with not planning. I was struggling what to talk about here because I feel like I am still kind of not very much farther than I was last week. But there has been something on my mind lately that I've been thinking of. You know what? I listen to podcasts. Surprise, surprise. Of course I do. I'm doing one. And if you do a podcast, listen to other people's podcasts, what's the point? Then I guess you're just doing it for money or you just want to hear yourself speak. But one of the podcasts I am listening to is called Behind the Bastard. It is by a comedian turned pseudo-journalist. He's not a real journalist in the sense where he works for a newspaper, but he does all the journalism things. And he has all these cool things where he goes to Syria and talks to the people there and actually tries to get real stories by talking to real people. He's a very fascinating guy. But Behind the Bastards is this series where he talks about really crummy people, like people who are huge pieces of crummy. The biggest crumbs to ever crumb. The crummiest crummy people to have ever crumbed. The suckiest bunch of sucks to have ever sucked, to quote Homer Simpson. And a lot of times he talks about right-wing liars and grifters, the Andrew Noes, and the people who, the British Hitler and different dictators. But another person he talks about are the people who are in my chosen industry, the people who are in the professional personal help industry. And right now haven't finished listening to it, but I'm starting on George Young, the person who created Young essential oils. And he's kind of he drowned a baby, which is, in my opinion, pretty crummy. And it would have been a perfectly healthy baby. You want to do some natural birth where you keep the baby underwater while it's still getting oxygen for some reason out of the umbilical cord. I guess I don't understand the technical side of it. But one thing that I do know, at least from his podcast, is he wasn't trained on how to do that. And ended up just pretty much drowning a baby. But that's as far as I've gotten him. But two people I have heard is Napoleon Hill, who his book is quite famous, Think and Grow Rich. And he thought and grow rich by writing that book. He was terrible to his wives, his terrible husband, as well as a terrible father, a lifetime grifter, and died penniless. So apparently Think and Grow Rich didn't work for him at the end. And I guess it was his wife who did a lot of the work, which honestly doesn't surprise me, because a lot of times when you look at the past, people either turn out to be mega racist or mega sexist. And it turns out the wife or some woman did a lot of the heavy lifting and some guy took a lot of the credit. That happened a lot of times in the past. I keep on hearing Make America Great Again, but honestly, there's no time that it's better to be alive than now, because honestly, America was never great, because honestly, the world was never really that great. Life sucked in the 1800s and before. Life sucked in the 1950s. Life sucked in the 1960s, 70s, 10s, 20s, 30s. Life was pretty much not super great in the past. Things are the best they are right now, and we need just to keep on working it to be better. But at the same time, not only Napoleon Hill, I keep on listening to multi-level marketing schemes, and I love the idea of them, the empowerment that they supposedly provide, but they say they're not a pyramid scheme, but every time you look at the payment structure, it's always in the shape of a pyramid or mini pyramid or a group of people that are kind of a pyramid. It's always the more people you recruit, the better. And anytime I see a company where I try to sell something, because part of me wants to do that because I want to learn how to sell other people's things. However, if one of the things I am selling is the product for other people to sell, that's an issue. For instance, unless you travel, every time you're in your local area and you get people to sell things in your local area, you're just creating competition for yourself. And there's only so many. And if you look at the statistics on multi-level marketing, a vast majority of people do not make money. But that got me thinking as well. And honestly, this entire industry is ripe with people who are not honest, people who are grifters, people who are charlatans. I figured out a long time ago when I first started trying to be a life coach that for me, if I truly wanted to make money, the best way for me to make money is to create a program where I teach people how to make money, because those sell well. And maybe trying to help people living a more joy-filled life, that is lucrative if you're able to get on the top, but there's plenty of people like me on the bottom who aren't making money at that. And when you're teaching over and over and over again, and you learn of other people, like the people who teach people to drink bleach, which is terrible for them. Or the people there's people who try to get people to drink bleach so that they could help their autistic children. And the preying upon people with natural remedies that honestly, people have to know a lot of those do not work. I mean, I'm not anti-supplements, but you got to know that a lot of the supplements you buy, right now, it is legal for me to take a pill, have it be 99% filler, 1% whatever, I could call it the superfood supplement, and have it have cacao, acai, quinoa, green tea extract, nettle, whatever. Basically I could have 50 ingredients, but I can put 1 grain of each ingredient. The rest be filler, so it's just 99% filler. Call it a proprietary recipe or that proprietary blend. Yeah, that's it. Proprietary blend. And it is legal for me to sell that. And as long as I say these claims are not verified by the FDA, and I don't go kind of beyond saying like it cures cancer, I can say it makes you feel better, because just telling you makes you feel better, placebos make you feel better, that's legal for me. That's something I can do right now. And there's so much misinformation out there. I am someone who researched health a lot. And to be honest, there's as many people saying doing this will save your life, and you can find somebody to tell you that same thing will kill you. And it's no matter what, from veganism to keto. I can find 10 people say keto will kill you. I can find 10 people say keto will save your life. I can tell 10 people that veganism will save your life. I can find 10 people say veganism will kill you. And there's a lot of people just taking advantage of people out there. So I try to think to myself, what kind of person I want to be? I want to be an inspiring person who goes out and helps people live their best lives, but I do not want to be a charlatan. I don't want to say things that are false. I don't want to say things that can hurt people. That's why I want to preach success is not guaranteed. If I create a coaching program and I'm a grifter, I teach 1,000 people my method and 10 people can get it to work. If I'm a grifter, those are the 10 people I'm going to sell, and then I'll blame everybody's failure on themselves. If you only did the work, you would have got it right, and I have this money back guarantee. I mean, that's all part of just, especially when you read about the entire marketing. I got Russell Brunson's book, and one of the things you're supposed to tell people is that it's not your fault and that I have the solution for you. And the idea of telling you that it's not your fault is a way to disarm yourself so you're more willing to buy my crap. It's all about manipulation. And how can I step above that? How can I be above manipulating other people, but also manipulate people to go for it and live their best lives? Because at the same time, I want to manipulate people to let go of their fear. I want to manipulate people to let go of their pain. I want to manipulate people to move forward in their lives and inspire them and have them feel great and move forward and be part of this amazing community where we come together and support each other on living our best lives. But at the same time, I don't want to be a charlatan, which is why I really like talking to authentic people. And speaking of authentic people, you're really going to love this interview with Bill Protzmann. Bill Protzmann has volunteer work has included the board positions Guitar for Vets, the San Diego Veterans Coalition. He has been instrumental in connecting thousands of military service members and veterans with honor tickets to the largest healing music organization in his town, the San Diego Symphony. Organizations like the Consumer Action, the Society for Financial Education, and the Professional Development 211 San Diego, and the American Musical Therapy Association have been delighted with his keynote presentations. For his inspirational work establishing music as self-care, he received an Inspiring Hope Award of Excellence from the National Council for Behavioral Health. He's here today to inspire, delight, and demonstrate the power of music as a tool for self-care. Please give a warm welcome to the man with the music, Bill Protzmann. Now here's my interview with Bill Protzmann. Hi, Bill, and welcome to my podcast.
Hey, Brett. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing this fine Monday?
Oh, it's awesome. We got a little cloud cover in San Diego. It's going to be up 78 degrees today. I mean, I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just like, hey, part of the world still has some nice weather.
Yeah, I always hear that San Diego has some of the most beautiful weather in the United States, actually.
Yeah, at least for now. One of our cities is slowly going underwater. Imperial Beach is feeling the ocean level rise thing, and it's kind of crazy. It's scary down there.
It says here that you are a pianist?
I am,
Is that what it is?
I've been playing piano since my mom started me at 3 years old. And to be honest with you, it took me until about 12 to like it, because classical piano players, you start learning some pretty silly stuff, and you learn the same stuff that thousands of people before you have learned to play. And then maybe eventually something clicks and you catch on. And the thing that clicked for me was ragtime. I don't know if you remember the movie The Sting, but that came out, and the music of Scott Joplin was suddenly being played on pop radio stations. It's the craziest thing. And I'd found a piece of ragtime and learned to play it. And so all of a sudden I was this, fifth grade entertainment center because I could play ragtime and people wanted to hear it. So it was fun from that point on. It became fun. Playing for an audience, it's nothing quite like that.
So I'm interested. How did you start with using music as self-care?
The awareness of that kind of crept up on me because when you're a kid, you don't understand. You're just playing. But what I've learned is that whenever you engage with music, even if you're hearing it in the background and really not sort of paying attention, if music is there, it's working on you. Physiologically, you hear sounds, they enter your brain responds, and you kind of can't help it. Even people who can't hear are responding to vibration that they can pick up through their feet or through their hands. And there's a part of that, too, in making music. You get the vibration right there in your hands. The bigger the piano, the better the vibration, the better the feedback. And the piano is actually telling me how it feels to respond to the pressure that I'm bringing to the ends of my fingers to make a note happen. It's a really cool relationship. Guitar players, people who play instruments that vibrate, that they're holding in their hands, they feel this. And I've learned through lots of experience, some of it difficult, some of it fun, that vibration is really, it's almost like food, Brett. We need sound and rhythm for us to thrive. We just do. And if you know what those things are doing for you, then you can become sort of skillful at what you hear and allowing that to have the effect it's supposed to have on you physiologically. And maybe we should say holistically. I mean, physiologically, that's true. But I believe that music touches us in ways that go far beyond the physical or the mental or the emotional, perhaps even to the spiritual. I think there's a complete package that comes along with awareness of sound and rhythm that you can tap into. So it took all that time. It's been a long, long time now. And it's one of those rabbit holes. You just keep following it. It just keeps surprising you with the kinds of things that music affects you, how it affects you, and what you can do with that.
How have you been using music in your life?
Fantastic. Great question. I use music when I have an emotion that I don't want, to let that emotion sort of flow through me. And music will facilitate that. So if I'm triggered to anger or something, I can find a piece of angry music that works on me. And by listening to that music, I let that anger become very intense, but also leave me, flow through me, before I have to make some response to it. And that's usually a pretty good idea, especially with things like anger and fear. It's good to think about your response to that and to come from a place that's more neutral, not so triggered. And music will bring me back to neutral. In fact, it'll bring lots of people back to neutral. You bring your attention to it and you can use it that way. Instead of just allowing it in the background, let's say, okay, I'm angry. I need some angry music, and let that anger play. Same thing for the other primary emotions. You can do that with fear. You can do that with sadness. And most importantly, for our podcast, you can do it with joy. When you're triggered to joy, wow, amp that up. Let's go with some joyous music.
So you utilize music as a way to amplify your current feelings that either allows you to embrace the positive ones and then work through the ones that you want to work through, such as anger, fear, and
Yeah, I'll take it
sadness?
one step further because I embrace those too. Music will let you do that in safety. So if you know that there's no downside, essentially, to being angry or scared, would you go ahead and feel them? Because holding that inside is not a great thing. Holding the feelings inside that you'd rather not have holds you back from the feelings that you want, from joy. So why not let that stuff go, and sort of push it on its way with music that allows you to have the complete experience in safety and then move on to something else. A lot of us try to intervene or paper over stuff. So if you're angry, you go, I'm not going to be angry now. I'm going to be happy. And we force ourselves into joy. Well, that's not quite so authentic because you're still carrying around the residue of those feelings of anger or the feelings you don't want. But feelings are just guardrails. Man, they're there to help us keep running down the path and not straying too far off the side or getting into trouble. We need those, what they call negative emotions. We always have. This is many thousands of years old. If you hear something scary as a human being, we may be at the top of the food chain, but back in the day, if you heard a tiger out there, you'd go back inside the cave and make sure your family was safe. And that's a really great response to fear. If we didn't have that response, we might be lunch. They're just chemical responses in our body, these feelings that we have. And yeah, they're intense. In my own case, for example, I was an angry kid and I suppressed those feelings because that's what we're taught to do. And I wound up being chronically depressed. Instead of having a safe experience of anger, it took me many, many years to learn that I could do that with music. And that when I did it, it not only lessened my anger, but it also lessened my depression, put me back in a place where I could choose joy. And if that isn't magical about music, well, I don't know. That's just like, oh my gosh, why don't we all know how to do this? And maybe we did and we forgot, and now we're relearning it again, which human history is what it is. Let's take some time and see what it's like to go with music into those emotions we don't like so that it opens the way and clears the space for the emotions we do.
So was going through that an accidental discovery?
Yeah. You know how you're living in life and things just sort of, one day you get it. You've done the same thing over and over for maybe years. And then one day a tiny little thing changes. You go, oh, wow. If I'd only known that, like that. I've had a number of those with music. And of course, the one that I've been talking about here, how music actually works on you at a deep level and that you can welcome that in and allow that change. That's fantastic. And I think those are the kinds of things that you only get through hard experience. People who've had those difficult experiences, they come and tell us, and I'm alive today because, and they fill in the blank with their incredible story that just, it's so inspiring. And there's usually some very obvious and simple truth there that anyone can take up and use in their own practice and change their life. And we need those stories. TED is any indication. All those TED Talks are so inspiring about people who've been in adversity and overcome it and brought some insight to us. And that's the kind of stuff that sustains us, at a really deep level. You really get in there. How does that work for you with joy? You get to choose joy a lot. That's your main line, right?
Well, yeah. That's always the goal every morning.
Sure. And so how do you get there? Let's talk about how each of us work together, and then we can find the commonalities.
I use a lot of positive affirmations and that feeling, tapping into memories that are joyful as well.
So music does that really well, right? You can remember, I remember my wedding and the music that was going on, and that's a joyous experience. So I can bring that back by just sort of hearing that song again in my head. It'll bring me back there.
Yeah, I wrote my book, Joyous Expansion, to the music of Natalie Bedingfield, her Pocket Full of Sunshine, because it's just such a happy album all the way through.
Awesome.
But I wanted to tap into that writing. Plus, mood association, in a way, when you do the same thing over and over again, gets you in the mood. And so when I play that album, it just makes me in the mood to write.
Perfect. Just illustrated something that I found when I was doing ragtime. If I needed a happy thing, I could go and play some rag, and wow, that would change everything. And so the memories over the years, I learned the 12th Street rag in 5th grade, and the entertainer stuff that came along shortly after that. Oh, those are happy memories. They're built in. They're just built into who I am. It's easy to get to them, easy to dial them up and to use them like in the present. So I can relate to that. By the way, if you're listening, this is not like psyching yourself out. This is actually opening a channel to the place inside you where those memories are stored, allowing them to come up, and with them, the feelings that go along with them. It's like a package deal. You get the music, you get the memory, you get the emotions that go along with it. Is that amazing or what?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how our human mind works and how music is such a big part of it.
We're like resonators. If you picked up the guitar, we're the part of it that takes the sound of the strings and then amplifies that and lets it sing. Play electric guitar, you can't really hear anything unless you've got it jacked into an amp. But that same tiny sound that the electric's making is a sound that an acoustic guitar makes. It's just much bigger because of the resonator. And if you treat your body like a resonator, you can bring all kinds of crazy musical expression into your life. I was going to ask you before we got started, but I'll do it now. Do you sing? I mean, even to yourself, not publicly. I'm just to yourself, right?
Not well. To myself, I do karaoke every once in a while. Super fun.
Wow, you're a jump above me. Scary, karaoke, scary. Karaoke. How about singing your affirmations? Have you tried it?
I haven't tried singing my affirmations, no.
Well, dude, man, hey, give it a shot. See what happens. Singing actually helps us connect to the intuitive, the creative side of our brains, where all of that inspiration we want, we used to call it the right brain, but all that inspiration that we want to amplify our day, we can get right to it with music. Bringing your affirmation up a level and singing it to yourself, you don't have to sing it to anybody, but sing it to yourself, that lets you get right in there and mess around with all that stuff that's nonlinear and non-analytical. Just tap right in.
Well, that's a great idea. I'll definitely try that out.
Let me know how it goes. If you're listening to Joyous Expansion, it's going to be Joyous Expansion 10x joy. Right? In some ways, you can't help it,
Exactly.
It's marvelous that we have this capability. I don't know. Do you know anything about Qigong?
I know a little bit.
I'm just starting to learn it. They have some practices that sort of touch your meridians and wake things up. And it's like not a massage. It's just sort of like tapping different places in the body that sort of wake up your chi, basically, is what it's doing, waking up the energy. When you hear things, like my voice resonating in your headphones right now, or a note that I play that reaches a listener. So that sound, that vibration is actually the touch of the musician or the speaker. So when you're singing to yourself, I mean, it's fine to do the affirmations in your head, but when you're singing to yourself, you touch your eardrums, your own eardrums, and that vibration that you're making resonates inside you in a very special way. And there's a huge responsibility along with that. I mean, I'm not going to yell at you over the microphone because it would hurt. But if I make music, the touch that I bring to the key on the piano creates the vibration that touches your eardrum, which is an incredibly huge responsibility. That's a very sensitive membrane. So I've got to bring some intention to that if I want that to be a satisfying touch. And just as you're singing your affirmations, I mean, you might scream them. You'd have a different effect than if you sang them. It's not about the quality of the sound. It's about the intention. And we've all seen singers, and you wonder, how is this person standing here on stage and we're listening to it? Why do they have this enormous following? Their voice is terrible. And yet there's something about them, right? And that something about them is what we're trying to get to here. It's that intention that's in there.
Yeah, as a kid, I used to wonder that about Janis Joplin.
Oh, yeah, perfect. And yet somebody will play the first few notes of the rose, those first chords, my skin will crawl, and I'll just get this incredible thing that's happening right now. There you go. And isn't that amazing? So as long as we're on the topic, it turns out that all you need to do is remember a piece of music, and you get the physiological effect of it. So when you said Janis Joplin, I immediately went to The Rose. By the way, wow, what a movie. But that song's sort of been iconic for me in a good way. And I play it a lot. But just saying the name of the song reminds me of everything that's in the whole song. And as you're training yourself to become fully aware of the emotions that are in a piece of music, it's also like putting memory away in your mind so that when you recall the song, you get the full physiology of it too in that same moment. And this stuff is fast. If I were to clap and you were to hear that in headphones, your body would respond to that in some way or another. Long time before you'd go, oh, Bill just clapped, and realize what it is. So deep down in our lizard brain, the amygdala is where those responses take place. And that's like the seat of our emotional response right there in the amygdala. It has been thousands of years. And that happens, and it takes a long time, relatively speaking, for the rest of the brain to catch up and explain to us what it is that we heard, if we happen to recognize it. Those responses to like music, the song, The Rose, those happen a long time before I start to remember the words. I'm already in the physiology of what that song does for me. So here's a challenge for you if you're listening. Think about the music that you love, and then what is your emotional response to each of those songs in your top 40? And like make that conscious, really bring that to your awareness, because that's a very specific thing that the music does for you. If you know what that thing is, then you can dial into it at a deep level and really let it work. With practice, the effect is immediate. Even before you think about it, you've already experienced the effect. Like when you said Janis Joplin, my skin crawled. So that already happened before I thought, oh yeah, The Rose, that's a great piece of music. Do you see how the progression works?
Oh yeah, totally.
It's like this part of us that, well, I called it the lizard brain, but fight, flight, or freeze. that kind of thing. That's where the response is coming from. And that's sort of only part of it. The latest science on this response that we have to sound is what they call the famous 5 Fs. Okay, so fight, flight, freeze, feed, or mate. So there's joyous responses in that thing too. It's not just fight, flight, or freeze, which sounds like could be scary. But we also have the impulse there to happy things, food and sex. These are things that keep us alive. Like I talked about earlier, the guardrails that keep us running in the straight way out of the danger zone.
So I'm curious. I know a lot of people who do music and mostly they decide to bring joy to people's life by doing music, but you seem to do one step beyond in actually creating some sort of self-care program with music. So what made you decide to go beyond just playing music to deliberately using music as a way to help people in their lives?
It's so cool to know that an audience is responding to this thing that's happening. And there's nothing quite like live theater and being on stage and all that. That's an incredible sort of ego gratification. But way beyond that, watching people change. I mean, if you're aware of it, you can be making music with people, say in a drum circle or just singing together, and you can watch the change happen. I got to be involved with Guitars for Vets a few years ago. So in that program, it's a nationwide program, and veterans get a free guitar and 10 lessons. And at the end of the 10 lessons, they get to keep the guitar. The idea there is that they can give themselves relief from post-traumatic stress using music. And there's a study and it works and it's all cool. But look, they're doing it by themselves. We need more of that. You can't always go running off to the expert when you get post-traumatically stressed. You need to have tools that you can use for yourself. In this aspect, self-care is a big part of not only Guitars for Vets, but there are a bunch of other not-for-profits that are doing useful things by teaching people how to use music as a tool, as something that you can take with you and always have available. And you don't have to have a guitar, as we talked about. You can bring it to mind and you'll be in that place. Drumming's another good example. The further we go down this road, I can think of any number of experiences of being in a band and watching people come alive, or our drum circles, or just watching a veteran that we gave a guitar to one day just sit down and start playing for the first time in years. And the guy knows probably thousands of songs by heart. He can sing and play them all, you name it. That's incredible. Watching a new life come in where before there was homelessness and addiction and trauma, watching that take over, there's nothing like that. That experience is just so incredible. And it's really motivated me, of course, to want to help people use music more intelligently as a holistic tool rather than just as a Band-Aid or in the background. That's sort of enlivened my entire scene for many, many years now. 10 of them that I've been doing this kind of work, but I've always played for people with an idea that we can take this musical journey together, and then taking the time to explain emotionally what that journey is going to look like and how it's going to ride. You've seen good movies. They start out slow and they build to a climax and they taper off. And that's a good example of how really well thought out concerts take place. You've been to arena concerts, right? And there's one song where everybody lights their lighters, and it used to be. Now it just hold up your phone. That beautiful ballad that takes place 2/3 of the way through the entire concert. You know what's going to happen after that, right? It's going to be an hour and a half of incredible up music. You'll be so tired by the time you're done and so happy. But that's intentional. That ballad is there to set it up. And if you start to know how to put music together, you can actually give yourself an intentional ride the same way you would if you were in a concert, if you were listening to a piece of music that's recorded, and take that ride right along with the music from start to finish and give yourself an emotional experience that you wouldn't have had otherwise. It might have happened and you might not have been aware of it, but bringing the awareness to it, there's power in that. And there's actually self-care in that if you're able to do it and set it up. So you can build yourself a little playlist around things like anger and fear that let them flow, and sadness too, which takes longer. And then, of course, the wonderful thing of joy. And you do the same ride with joy. You can start out at contentment and then amp it all the way up to ecstasy and then roll back to peace. And you get a great, joyous playlist out of a musical arc like that.
So do you work with people one-on-one or just in groups?
I've spent a lot of time doing both, working one-on-one in Guitars for Vets or with my homeless folks that I volunteer for. But I also teach classes so that it's possible to go into a class and together work through whatever the topic is that we're working on in music care that day. I also do this online, of course, because I can't be everywhere. So I set up a course online. People can take it there. And it's a fully mentored interactive course so that I'm able to jump in and work with you. And you could ask questions and I can say, well, here's what I'm thinking. How's that work for you? And we can correspond that way throughout the course itself. Because this is a great topic, and I'm not aware of anybody who's really out there and saying, hey, instead of a one-on-one therapeutic or educational relationship, let's open this up. Let's let people do this on their own. We all respond to sound and rhythm. let's just work with that. Let's explain how that works. Let's let people stand upon the knowledge that we already have and go to new places on their own, without a therapist, so to speak, to get to this place where they can sustain their own changes and live lives that are more enriched and fulfilled than a flat, emotionless life.
So what was it like winning the Inspiring Hope Award of Excellence from the National Council for Behavioral Health?
Oh my gosh, was I surprised? I'm just a piano player who teaches folks how to respond to music, The National Council on Behavioral Health is a big deal. It's national. It's an association that's, I'd say, more than 99% containing people in the behavioral health area. And that could be people who are working as social workers with homeless people on the street, or it could be clinicians and therapists who are working either in research or in clinical practice. And for a piano player to get nominated, I've been doing this homeless work that I do, teaching homeless people about how music care works, like we've been talking here. The organization I was volunteering for nominated me, and it's like, okay, well, that's fine. Sounds like a really big deal. What chance do I have of getting it? Well, I won. And in the behavioral health industry, that's like winning an Oscar. So that year in 2014, I think it was, there were about 18 different individuals and organizations who were honored. And they do this every year in a bunch of different categories. And I got to go to Washington, D.C. and give a short speech and play for 5,000 people were in the room that night having dinner. It was crazy. Hillary Clinton was one of the keynote speakers. I mean, I had no idea it was that big of a deal until I actually went and experienced it. 4-day conference and 5,000 people. It was powerful. And it gave me hope. I think the most important thing about that is that the behavioral health industry, which has kind of been a one-on-one industry for a long time, is looking for innovative ways to be able to serve more people more skillfully. And we just have to look at self-care, not self-help so much, but actual self-care, evidence-based, holistic modalities that people can use on their own, independent of being with their therapist at the time, to help sustain their change, intervene with things that are tough, amp up incredibly powerful responses that you just can't get to without practice. The average bear isn't going to go out and climb a mountain the way a skilled climber would. So bringing our skill set that we have inside of us back to focus on self-care modalities that we can use. And you've probably heard about EFT, like tapping, that thing where you tap. That's a great self-care modality. Yoga and meditation. And I'm using them together because yoga as exercise is not self-care, but yoga and meditation, where you use yoga to prepare yourself for meditation. That's a holistic self-care practice right there. And then the intentional use of music, whether that's performing it or singing it or remembering it or just listening to it, participating in it in some way. That's an effective self-care modality that's holistic as well, because it works on every part of us, the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual. It works on every part. I think National Council was saying, hey, let's open up the opportunity here a bit more. Let's see what we can do that isn't defined in a licensed clinical setting that allows people who experience that clinical setting to be able to continue to do the work, continue to practice what they've learned in a way that's useful and very life-affirming to sustain their wellness when they're not in front of the clinician. I think we need more practices like that. I was very pleased, surprised, and honored to receive the award. It continues to motivate me to want to find new ways that we can get in front of people who really need this. So many at-risk people out there, but people who really need this. Look at all the issues that are available to us today. I'm thinking, of course, of a couple more shootings over the weekend. It's hard to ignore those things, and you can't suppress them. You have to respond. The media makes sure that we respond. So what's your response? If it can be empathy and compassion, music can help prepare you for that empathy and compassion that's so necessary right now. Or conversely, if like me, those kinds of things make me really angry. I'll be honest with you, Brett, this shouldn't be happening, right? It's not sustaining us to go around shooting each other. How do you respond to that? Well, for me, I get angry about it, and I've got to listen to something angry to give myself the release of that anger. Because trying to put compassion in front of anger, it's like, no, it's oil and water. It's not going to mix well. So letting the anger go first puts me in a place where I can open up some compassion and empathy and see if there's a way that I can be, if nothing else, respond in that, I want to say in that style, maybe in that, put it in musical terms, respond with that kind of inner music instead of with the angry inner music. Let's see, there's a study, it's ages ago now, where they had monks that would pray for a particular outcome, and they were able to measure the outcome and determine that the monks' prayers were effective. Well, that's great scientific evidence. If you believe that stuff and you don't need the evidence, great, that's amazing. But we're starting to get evidence about how powerful our intentions are and the mindset, or what I like to call the heart set, because it's more than just what you think. It's like keeping your resonator completely tuned in to what works and what's helpful. That's the compassion and empathy side. So got to let the other stuff go before you've got room for that compassion and empathy to flow in. So that there's a real need for those of us who are not in front of therapists right now to be able to have a response that's powerful, that works, that is lined up with the evidence. And of course, the evidence is we've got two sides to that. If you stay in the fear and anger side and you act based on that, it just escalates the situation. But if you are able to turn to compassion and empathy, that puts a damper on the stuff that's bad and sort of brings us back to a place where we can have a reasoned, heart-centered response. And it's hard, man. It's really hard. I mean, how do you have compassion for someone whose goal is to go out there and kill people? It's difficult. It's really difficult. But we need practices to be able to do it, like climbing that mountain. The more practice you get, the better you're going to be at the response.
100% agree. 100% agree. So we are getting towards the end of our time together, and one thing I like to ask my interviewees is for a 1 minute of motivation. You can think of this as if you have a time machine and you're traveling back to your 8-year-old self, and you want to convey the information needed to live a happy, joyful life, but unfortunately, you only have a minute for your plop down back into the present. Or you can think of it about condensing your life message into a minute. Are you ready to go?
The motivational minute I have begins with a question. And that question for you to ask yourself is, how do I sustain change? We know change is going to happen. How do I sustain it? Do I just allow it, or do I fight it every step of the way? And I've found that allowing the change is a much less destructive way than fighting it. So for me to allow change well, and perhaps for you, I support that change with music. Because music allows me to let go of the stuff that's going to hold me back, whether they're feelings or thoughts, and be open to the things that are going to pull me forward, the inspiration, even a little bit of healthy fear, because, we should be a little bit scared. Those butterflies that I get right before walking onto the stage to play for you, they're there for a reason. So it's like welcoming in those butterflies and allowing the power of those emotions, whatever they are, with music, can take you to the place where you're ready to respond to that change in such a brand new way that will sustain you through whatever comes to you. So change your music, change your life, and also sustain the changes that are going to come to you throughout that life.
Thank you so much for coming on to my podcast. I really enjoyed your story on how you discovered how music can affect self-care and help people process through all their emotions, not just trying to cover it up, but able to process the anger, process the sadness, as well as helping people just get their lives back on track, utilizing the power of music. I would like to thank you so much for sharing your message on my podcast, and thank you so much for your contribution to making this world a better place.
You're so welcome, Brett, and likewise. Thank you.
May your day be special.
Yeah, and you.
And there you have it, folks. That is my interview with Bill Protzmann. One thing I like about that interview is a lot of times I like to hear about people's personal stories, because I believe personal stories is how we connect. But at the same time, I really enjoyed the subject, hearing how music can change your life and talking about the vibrations of it. Because, yeah, we are all vibration, and music is a big part of it. Let's first talk about the elephant in the room. This recording was done in around August, and at that time there was just another shooting. And just say another, there have been a couple since then. It's pretty much a common occurrence now in the United States. We just have somebody go crazy and just start shooting for a lot of times racist reasons. But at the same time, listening to music is a way to process. I remember when going, every time I've gone through breakups, just listening to happy songs, sometimes sad songs that would make me cry. And I remember with the last breakup I went through, hearing that sad song and having the tears not flow down anymore, thinking to myself, that's an improvement. I think I processed through that. Because one thing I do agree on 100%, our emotions aren't negative. They just are. And we need to process our supposedly negative emotions, our sadness, anger, fear. Those are to be processed, to be something done with, not to push them down and just cover them up, or they'll come back in epic proportions. Emotions are something to be dealt with, and music is such a great way to deal with life. Music is a very important part. The first time we put sound to a movie, the first movie made was Music Man. We made a musical. Because there's just something about music. I think there's I only know of one culture, period, that does not have music. It's in Brazil. It's a very interesting tribe. But every other culture has some form of music, some form of rhythm, some form of song. And it's just part of our human DNA, that ability to create sound in a way that is pleasing to us and it can truly affect our emotions. And it's really cool. So if you want to work with Mr. Protzmann, music as a self-care is an idea whose time has come. You can find Bill Protzmann online or contact him directly via email or phone using the website practicalheartskills.com. practicalheartskills.com. If you're ready to jump in, learn how to use music as self-care, take the guided, gamified, and fully monitored online course at quest.musiccare.net. Both of the dots aren't spelled. And there you have it, folks. That is 45 of the Joyous Expansion podcast. 45 episodes. How cool is that? If you like it, please like, subscribe, leave a review, all those fun things that just prove that you love me for who I am, because I love you for who you are. Remember, you can see me at Joyous Expansion. I'm on Instagram, Joyous Expansion, Twitter, Joyous Expansion, Facebook, well, Increase Your Joy. You can also email me at BRE2TsDUPR2Es at joyousexpansion.com. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I appreciate you a lot. You can also check out my other podcast, The Church of Awesome, which you can go to thechurchofawesome.com for more information. Also, you can check out Seven Stones Radio, where The Church of Awesome is located. Once again, I'm Brett Dupree, the champion of authentic joy, catalyst of transformation of the Church of Awesome, and Joyous Expansion Life Coach, reminding you once again to be love, to be joy, to be awesome. Now play that jingle.
JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Come and say hello to Brett Dupree. He is an inspirational life coach, good for you and good for me. He turned my life from grey to blue, I'm sure he'll do the same for you. Get in touch and you'll see your life will change dramatically. JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com.